After the death of Anthony Bourdain, the world was left with questions that never quite faded. But it wasn't an interview or headline that stirred things again. It was a quiet, deeply personal message from his ex-wife, Ottavia Busia. At first glance, it felt like a simple tribute, but the more people looked closer, the more it seemed to confirm something fans had long suspected. Not through accusations or drama, but through a small, emotional detail that carried far more weight than it appeared. How danger shaped a young Bourdain. When Anthony Bourdain was born in New York City in 1956, life didn't exactly start off glamorous. His father was grinding through long hours just to keep things afloat. But over time, the family's world shifted. They moved from modest beginnings into a more cultured, intellectually rich space. His father rising to become a record executive, and his mother working as an editor at the New York Times. From the outside, it looked like the kind of upbringing that would set someone on a clean, predictable path. But Bourdain was never wired for predictable. The turning point came quietly, almost Luchino, during a family trip to France. A fisherman pulled an oyster straight from the sea, cracked it open, and handed it over. Young Tony took a bite, and just like that, something clicked. He would later describe it as a kind of awakening, the moment everything began. It wasn't just about taste. It was about discovery, risk, and stepping into the unknown. That moment planted a seed, but the road that followed was anything but smooth. Growing up, Bourdain had already been surrounded by culture, books, music, film, but there was a part of him that felt like he was missing something. At his prep school in New Jersey, he watched classmates shaped by chaos, absent parents, broken homes, real struggle. Compared to that, his own life felt almost too stable, and strangely, that stability started to feel like a weakness. So, he went looking for an edge. That search began early. By his own admission, even as a child, he felt a pull toward danger. By the time he was barely a teenager, curiosity had already turned into action. What started as experimentation quickly became something heavier, setting the stage for a long and complicated relationship with drugs. But rebellion wasn't just about substances, it was also about love. In high school, he met Nancy Putkowski. She was older, sharper around the edges, and surrounded by a crowd that lived fast and loose. What could have been a short-lived teenage romance turned into something much deeper. She didn't just influence his choices, she helped shape the direction of his life. Bourdain finished high school early, not out of discipline, but urgency. Nancy had moved on to college, and he followed. But once he got there, the illusion didn't last. He found himself disconnected, surrounded by people he couldn't relate to. After holding it in for as long as he could, he made a decision that shocked his family. He dropped out and chose culinary school instead. It sounded drastic, almost reckless. But to him, it felt honest. He often told the story of that oyster in France as the spark behind his culinary journey. And it was. But there was another moment, less poetic, far more chaotic, that sealed the deal. During a summer job as a dishwasher, he stepped outside one night and stumbled onto something straight out of a movie. A head chef tangled up with a woman behind the dumpsters during a wedding reception. The twist? The woman was the bride. It was messy, wild, completely unfiltered, and for Bourdain, it revealed something about the life he was stepping into. Kitchens weren't just about food. They were intense, unpredictable worlds full of heat, pressure, and raw human behavior. That energy pulled him in just as much as the cooking itself. After culinary school, he and Nancy returned to New York City, ready to build a life, or at least their version of one. They found work, secured an apartment, and settled into a routine that, on the surface, looked stable. Underneath, things were unraveling. The habits they had picked up earlier didn't fade. They deepened. What started as partying turned into something more dangerous. Bourdain wasn't just using anymore. He was drifting into dealing, living a life he would later describe as chaotic and reckless. The two of them moved like partners in crime, navigating a world fueled by adrenaline and bad decisions. There were moments that could have ended everything. Close calls with law enforcement, risky encounters that could have gone sideways in an instant. But somehow he kept moving, always just one step ahead of consequences that seemed to be closing in. Back home, his parents' marriage was falling apart after decades together. At the same time, his career in the kitchen was actually starting to gain traction. He worked his way up to sous chef, earning respect for his skill and work ethic. But even that progress came with a cost. The kitchen culture around him was relentless. Long hours, high pressure, and easy access to drugs created an environment where excess wasn't just accepted, it was normal. He and his colleagues operated in a constant haze, slipping away during shifts to feed their habits before jumping right back onto the line as if nothing had happened. Eventually, the line between control and chaos disappeared. He found himself chasing stronger highs, putting himself in dangerous situations just to score. There were moments when that pursuit turned violent, like the time he was held at gunpoint while trying to buy drugs. And still, somehow, he kept functioning. He kept cooking. He kept showing up. That duality became his reality. One life in the kitchen, another spiraling outside of it. There were flashes of the intensity that defined him, too. In one infamous moment, pushed too far by a superior who wouldn't respect boundaries, Bourdain snapped. The response was sudden and brutal, a clear signal that he wasn't someone to be pushed indefinitely. In the high-stakes world of professional kitchens, that kind of reaction didn't just end conflicts, it cemented reputations. But beneath that toughness, the cracks were widening. He drifted from one struggling restaurant to another, his addiction tightening its grip. Then came a moment that forced him to confront reality. Sitting in a cab with 3 other addicts on the way to score, he made a dark joke about survival odds, only 1 in 4 making it out. Then he looked around and realized there were exactly 4 of them. The joke didn't land. It couldn't. For the first time, the math felt real. And in that moment, he made a quiet decision. He was going to be the one who survived. Getting there, though, was another story entirely. He tried to clean up, turning to methadone to break away from heroin. But the grip of addiction doesn't loosen easily. One substance gave way to another, and soon he found himself in an even darker place. Desperation took over in ways that were hard to ignore, searching through carpets for anything he might have dropped, chasing ghosts that weren't even there. Still, he hadn't hit bottom. Not yet. That came on a Christmas day that stripped everything down to its core. Broke and desperate, he laid out his prized record collection on a sidewalk and sold it piece by piece just to get through the moment. Standing there, watching it all disappear, something finally shifted. It wasn't dramatic, no big speech, just a quiet realization that he couldn't keep going like this. So he stopped. But as he would later come to understand, stopping was only the beginning of a much longer fight. Bourdain's life inside shady kitchens. After a run of 3 failed restaurants and a shaky attempt at getting his life back on track, Anthony Bourdain found himself working under a man he would later nickname the Silver Shadow. At first, it seemed like just another tough kitchen job, but it didn't take long for him to realize something was off. This wasn't just a difficult boss or a high-pressure environment, this was organized crime. And somehow, out of all the kitchens in the city, he had landed in the one that doubled as a hub for shady dealings. The setup inside was unlike anything he had seen before. The cooks who were supposed to be prepping ingredients weren't really cooks at all. They were the boss's personal dealers. The unspoken rules were clear. Leave them alone, don't interfere with their side business, and if anything, feel free to indulge. It could have pulled him right back into old habits, but instead, Bourdain did something unexpected. He tried to bring order to the chaos. He started firing people, cleaning up operations, tightening standards. The Silver Shadow didn't care about food quality, but he loved saving money. Every person Bourdain let go meant fewer mouths to pay. Before long, the role of head chef had twisted into something else entirely. He wasn't leading a kitchen anymore. He was managing damage, cutting loose anyone who slowed things down. Eventually, it caught up with him. Between the toxic environment and a growing depression, the breaking point came when he had to fire someone he had personally trained. That moment hit differently. It forced him to step back and see what he had become. So he walked away, convinced his career in the kitchen was finished for good. What followed was a humbling stretch. He ended up working at a raw bar in the East Village, doing repetitive, thankless work, shucking oysters day in and day out. It was the kind of job that felt like a dead end. Then came the call that changed everything. His father had suffered a sudden heart attack and passed away at just 57. It hit hard. Bourdain had always spoken about his father with deep respect, crediting him for shaping his curiosity and worldview. Losing him created a void that couldn't be filled. But life in New York didn't pause for grief. If he wanted to survive, he had to keep moving. And so he did, but not in a good direction. He drifted through a series of increasingly rough kitchens, deliberately avoiding leadership roles. He didn't want the responsibility anymore. He didn't want the pressure. He just wanted to disappear into the background. The drug use hadn't fully disappeared either. It had changed forms, shifted slightly, but it was still there, lingering in the background of his life. And beneath it all, there was a quiet, constant unhappiness. At one point, he found himself working in yet another mob-connected restaurant. This time, he was excelling. Too much, in fact. The people at the top started to take a liking to him, and not in a safe way. They trusted him more than his own boss, which created a dangerous imbalance. One careless complaint about that boss triggered a reaction that chilled him. It felt like he had crossed an invisible line, like something irreversible had just been set in motion. Whether real or imagined, the fear was enough. He packed up and left without looking back. By the mid-1990s, though, things finally began to shift. He landed what seemed like the opportunity he had been waiting for, an executive chef position at a high-end Tuscan restaurant run by a major name in the industry. He gave it everything: long hours, relentless effort, full commitment. He helped build the place from the ground up, racing to get it ready for opening. But just as quickly as it came together, it fell apart for him. Right after the doors opened, he was abruptly pushed aside and demoted. For Bourdain, that kind of disrespect wasn't something he could swallow. So once again, he walked. This time, though, something better was waiting. He was brought on as executive chef at Brasserie Les Halles, a well-known French brasserie in Manhattan. And for the first time in years, things clicked. Here, he had control. He ran the kitchen his way, hired his own team, and cooked food he actually believed in. After nearly 2 decades of chaos, he had finally found his footing. But while his career in the kitchen stabilized, something else was quietly building in the background. In his free time, Bourdain started writing. Not cookbooks, not essays, fiction. He worked on crime novels set in the restaurant world, pulling from the strange, often dangerous environments he had lived through. One of those stories mirrored the mob-run kitchens he knew all too well. Eventually, he shifted gears. Instead of fiction, he decided to tell the truth. He wrote a brutally honest piece about what really goes on behind restaurant doors, the kind of story most chefs would never dare to tell. At first, nothing happened. The piece struggled to find a home. Then, almost overnight, everything changed. When the essay was finally published in The New Yorker, it hit like a shockwave. Within a week, publishers came calling, and Bourdain was offered a book deal. That book would become Kitchen Confidential. The timing couldn't have been more critical. Despite his steady job at Les Halles, Bourdain was barely holding things together financially. Years of instability had left him buried in debt. He had no insurance, was behind on rent, and was constantly looking over his shoulder when it came to taxes. Kitchen Confidential didn't just change his career, it saved him. But success came with consequences. For years, one constant in his life had been Nancy Putkowski. She had been there through everything: the addiction, the failed jobs, the small victories. By the 1990s, their once chaotic lifestyle had settled into something quieter. Nights at home, simple routines, and occasional trips to the Caribbean where they could escape it all. It wasn't flashy, but it was stable. And then everything shifted. As Bourdain's writing career took off, new opportunities opened up. He started thinking beyond New York, beyond kitchens. He wanted to see the world, to tell stories from places he had never been. The idea of turning that into a travel show didn't seem so far-fetched anymore. But when fame arrived, it didn't come quietly. The success of Kitchen Confidential brought attention, and that attention brought television. While the world saw opportunity, Nancy saw something else: instability, change, a life she didn't want. Bourdain moved forward anyway, and that decision came at a cost. The life they had built together started to crack under the pressure. He tried to hold it together, making gestures to keep things intact, renovating their home, flying across the world just to be present for holidays. But the gap between them had already grown too wide. They wanted different lives. After 20 years together, the marriage ended in 2005. From the outside, Bourdain looked like he had finally made it. He was becoming a global figure, someone people admired and followed. But internally, things were far more fragile. At one point, while in St. Martin, a place filled with memories of better times, he reached a breaking point. Sitting behind the wheel after a night of drinking, he came dangerously close to making a decision he couldn't undo. At the last second, something pulled him back. A song on the radio, a fleeting moment of clarity. Whatever it was, it stopped him. He drove away, but the weight of that moment stayed with him. It forced him to confront something uncomfortable. Success didn't erase pain. It didn't fix what was broken. Still, there were moments that reminded him why he kept going. In 2006, while filming No Reservations in Beirut, what started as a simple food-focused episode turned into something far more intense. Without warning, conflict erupted. The 2006 Lebanon War broke out, and the city around them began to change overnight. Missiles struck, streets emptied, the vibrant atmosphere they had come to capture disappeared. Bourdain and his crew were forced to shelter in place, watching from a distance as parts of the city burned. The situation became more dangerous by the hour. Eventually, an escape plan came together. With the help of locals, they made their way to the coast, where a U.S. Marine vessel was evacuating civilians. What stayed with Bourdain wasn't just the danger, it was the people. Families gathered on the beach, carrying whatever they could, leaving behind everything else. The reality of it all cut deeper than anything he had experienced before. That episode became one of the most powerful moments of his career. It earned recognition, including an Emmy nomination, but more importantly, it changed him. It expanded his perspective. It reshaped the way he saw the world and his place in it. The heartbreak behind the camera. After the explosive success of Kitchen Confidential, Anthony Bourdain found himself forming a close bond with Eric Rippert, a chef whose calm, disciplined presence balanced out Tony's more chaotic energy. Rippert could see that his friend was struggling with loneliness after his divorce, so he stepped in and tried to help. He introduced Bourdain to Ottavia Busia, a hostess at one of his restaurants, thinking it might at least give Tony a break from everything weighing on him. What started as a simple setup didn't stay simple for long. The connection was immediate, intense, and fast-moving. By the second date, they were already marking the moment with matching tattoos. It was the kind of whirlwind relationship that seemed to move at its own pace, building momentum almost overnight. Then came the trip to Beirut, a turning point that shifted something deep inside him. When he returned, shaken by what he had witnessed during the 2006 Lebanon War, his outlook had changed. Life suddenly felt more fragile, more urgent. For years, Bourdain had never seriously considered becoming a father, but now, with Ottavia, that idea didn't feel distant anymore. It felt necessary. In 2007, they welcomed their daughter, Ariane. At 50 years old, Bourdain stepped into fatherhood in a way that surprised even him. He embraced it fully, finding a sense of purpose that had been missing for much of his life. The reckless edge that once defined him began to soften. The risks he used to take without hesitation suddenly carried weight. There was someone depending on him now. Just days after their daughter was born, he and Ottavia made it official and got married. For the first time, Bourdain had something that resembled stability, a reason to stay grounded in a life that had always pulled him in 100 different directions. But stability didn't erase everything else. As his fame continued to grow, it began to reshape the relationships around him. One of the hardest losses came in the form of a broken friendship. A longtime colleague and trusted ally, someone he had once considered family, was suddenly cut out of his life. Bourdain became convinced that a private moment had been sold to the media. Whether that belief was fully accurate or not, the damage was permanent. Fame didn't just bring attention, it brought pressure. After years of financial struggle, Bourdain had developed a habit of saying yes to every opportunity that came his way. And now those opportunities were everywhere. Filming schedules stretched across continents. Book tours filled whatever gaps remained. Public appearances became constant. He spent more than 250 days a year on the road. At first, his family adapted, but as his daughter grew older and started school, the reality changed. They couldn't follow him everywhere anymore. The distance became more than physical. It became emotional. By 2016, his marriage to Ottavia Busia had quietly come to an end. The timing made it even harder. As he stepped into the spotlight to promote his cookbook, Appetites, his personal life was unraveling behind the scenes. The recipes he was sharing with the world were rooted in a home life that no longer existed. Still, the momentum didn't stop. That same year, Bourdain reached a level of recognition that few ever experience. He was invited to share a meal with Barack Obama for an episode of Parts Unknown. The setting was simple, a small noodle shop in Hanoi, plastic stools, cold beer, and bowls of bun cha, but the moment carried weight. What struck Bourdain most wasn't the power sitting across from him. It was the lack of freedom that came with it. Watching Obama move through the world under constant protection made him realize how rare it was to experience something as simple as a quiet meal in public. When Bourdain casually mentioned he would be riding his scooter through the city later, he could sense a flicker of envy. It was a reminder that even at the highest level, there are trade-offs. Not long after, another moment forced Bourdain to confront his own vulnerability. While in France, working on a project, he fell seriously ill. After taking medication on an empty stomach, he blacked out and collapsed in a restaurant doorway. When he came to, the experience shook him deeply. It echoed the suddenness of his father's death, a reminder that everything could end without warning. That night, he reached out to someone from his past, Nancy Putkowski. He poured out his regrets, acknowledging the mistakes he had made and the ways he had fallen short. It wasn't about rekindling anything. It was about confronting the weight he had been carrying. Not long after, a new relationship began. In 2017, Bourdain met Asia Argento, an Italian actress and director with a life story as complex as his own. From the start, he was all in. There was no hesitation. What drew him in wasn't just attraction, it was recognition. She understood the pressures of fame in a way few people could. She had lived in that world since childhood, navigating attention, expectations, and scrutiny long before he ever stepped into it. For Bourdain, that connection felt rare. They shared a similar drive, a need to create, to stay in motion. Their relationship operated on an understanding that work would always come first. There were no arguments about missed vacations or broken plans. They both accepted the reality of their lives and leaned into it. To those around them, the connection seemed intense, even consuming. But beneath the surface, there were complexities that remained hidden. During the height of the #MeToo movement, Bourdain stood firmly beside Argento as she spoke out about her experiences with Harvey Weinstein. He didn't stay silent. He used his voice, even when it meant calling out people within his own industry, including Mario Batali. For Bourdain, this wasn't about public image. It was personal. He acknowledged his own past, his own role in a culture that had allowed certain behaviors to thrive. He didn't separate himself from it, he confronted it. That willingness to evolve earned him respect. But internally, the pressure continued to build. The constant travel, the demands of television, the emotional weight of his relationships, it all began to take a toll. Those closest to him noticed changes. He became more withdrawn at times, more unpredictable. There were moments where he pushed people away, even those who cared about him deeply. At one point, he considered stepping away from everything, even calling a meeting with his team to suggest ending his long-running show. But when faced with the reality of walking away, he hesitated. The work, for all its demands, was still a part of him. By 2018, Parts Unknown was nearing its final chapter. One of the last journeys took him to Kenya, alongside W. Kamau Bell. Even after years of global travel, there were still places he had yet to see, still stories waiting to be told. In quieter moments, he reflected on the life he had built, the opportunities, the experiences. It all felt surreal, even to him. For the final episode, he returned to New York, the place where everything had started. Not to center himself, but to listen. He stepped back, letting others tell their stories, following a simple idea. Less focus on him, more focus on the world around him. But behind the scenes, things were becoming more complicated. While filming in Hong Kong, tensions rose when Asia Argento joined the production in a directing role. Conflicts emerged. Decisions were made that surprised even longtime collaborators, and the atmosphere shifted. At the same time, his personal life was under strain. When photos surfaced of Argento with another man, Bourdain appeared more frustrated than devastated, but the situation added another layer of emotional weight. Still, the work continued. It always did. In early June 2018, he was in France, filming once again with Eric Rippert. It should have been just another stop in a long career defined by movement and storytelling, but this time was different. On June 8th, when Bourdain didn't show up, Rippert went looking for him. What he found marked the end of a life that had touched millions. Anthony Bourdain was gone at 61. The reaction was immediate and global. Tributes poured in from everywhere, including from Barack Obama, who reflected on their shared moment in Hanoi. Outside Brasserie Les Halles, people gathered, leaving flowers, notes, and memories. Some traveled long distances just to say goodbye. For those closest to him, the loss was difficult to process. To many, it felt unimaginable. And in that silence that followed, one thing became painfully clear. No matter how full a life may look from the outside, there are always battles that remain unseen. After his death, Bourdain's ex-wife confirms the rumors. After the world lost Anthony Bourdain, one of the most moving tributes came from his ex-wife, Ottavia Busia, and it carried a quiet weight that reflected not just their past, but the family they still shared through their daughter, Ariane. Bourdain and Busia had been together for nearly a decade before separating in 2016, but unlike many high-profile breakups, theirs wasn't defined by conflict. Over time, they had simply grown into different lives. Even after the separation, they remained connected, still functioning as partners when it came to raising their daughter. There was no public fallout, no bitterness, just a shared understanding that some relationships evolve without completely breaking apart. That connection became especially clear in the days following his passing. Busia shared a quiet moment from their daughter's life, something simple but deeply personal. Ariane had just performed at a concert, standing on stage with a kind of confidence that felt far beyond her years. In the photo, she looked strong, steady, completely in her element. What made the moment even more meaningful was a small detail. She was wearing boots her father had bought her. Busia's message wasn't long, but it said everything. It was less about public grief and more about speaking directly to someone who was no longer there, holding on to the idea that he might still, somehow, be watching. It captured the kind of loss that doesn't need big words, just quiet acknowledgement and memory. For those who had followed Bourdain's life, it hit especially hard because of how openly he had spoken about fatherhood. Years earlier, while working on The Taste, he had shared just how much being a father meant to him. It wasn't something he took lightly or treated as an afterthought. To him, it was the most meaningful role he had ever stepped into. He found joy in the smallest moments, especially the time he spent with his daughter in the kitchen. She would climb onto a chair just to reach the counter, fully focused, wearing her little apron like it was a uniform. Together, they cooked simple meals, ratatouille, omelets. Nothing extravagant, just shared time. Those moments stayed with him. For all the places he traveled and all the stories he told, it was that space, being a father, standing in a kitchen with his daughter, that grounded him the most. It was where everything felt clear, where the noise of the world faded into something simple and real. In the end, through Busia's tribute and those memories, what stands out isn't just the public figure the world knew, but the quieter side of Bourdain, the one who found his greatest sense of purpose in being a father.